God, Brian, can you believe that we have with us today the one and only, the magnificent Marissa Gamberutti?
No, we are blessed. We are lucky. Frankly, we're most likely unworthy. It's a real pleasure to have her coming by.
Delight. What a delight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I will hide myself immediately already. We're like 2 seconds into the podcast.
That's the goal. We like people to feel uncomfortable as soon as you arrive.
Yes, indeed. If you are not feeling unwell, then you got to get out of here. So
The wrong vibe.
Well, hello, Marissa. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's good to be here. I am a big fan of the podcast. I have listened to every episode, so
Amazing.
we'll say that in the beginning.
See, Zamboni says amazing, and my brain says, uh-oh. What did I say? I have no idea what came out of my mouth in any of the previous episodes. So, yeah, now I'm terrified. Now you've turned the
All
tables.
good things. All good things.
Yeah, well, the more rigorous the feedback, the better for me, I'd say. You know, like, please torch my shit, because I don't. I clearly don't know what I'm talking about, but I want to know. You know, like, I want to run it through the ringer. If it survives that, then it must be real, right?
Yeah.
If it's real,
I'm the wrong person to do that. Because you were like, everybody wants to feel good, and I was like, Zamboni, yes, and I'm like, no notes.
Right. Yes. So you are, as I understand it, you are a scholar of desire, of the concept of desire. Is this correct?
I like that title. Yes, I will put that on myself. A scholar of desire.
Yeah. So you've been hanging out with us, like listening to me and Brian and others hang out and exploring this concept. You know that I've been chest deep in sludge trying to figure out what even am desire for this whole time. And so how do you like my model that desire more or less consists of an attraction to the thing that feels good and a repulsion from the thing that doesn't feel good?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense to me. It's like learning what your body's yeses and nos are, and like moving towards the things that you want, moving away from the things that you don't want. Like, you have to have that sense of being drawn towards something or being pushed away from something in order to know where you're going. Like, that's the only way your compass is gonna work, is you have to have that, like, no thanks, don't want that. And yeah, it makes sense that desire would have, like, both of those things being true. Like, you kind of have to feel the push and the pull at the same time, and like, so the things that you don't want are also desire as much as the things that you do want.
I like this. I like where we're starting. Because I like that the instead of a straightforward positive definition, right? There's a lot of I like via negativas. I like saying we know what it is because it's not this, like, that's kind of fun. But I think also in this case, I'm interested in exploring a little bit about what you just said there around how repulsion in the sense of pushing away or pushing away from is intrinsic in discovering what you want, right? Like the nose, right? And I want to draw a distinction as we get into it, just because I think it's a word that gets misused a lot. Like, a lot of times we say repulsion and we mean revulsion, right? Like, a lot of people will hear, this repels me and think, oh, it's disgusting. Oh, and it's like, no, that's actually revulsion. Like, that's a different feeling. Repulsion is literally just like, it pushes me away, or I push away from. So, yeah, how do you see the no's leading you to the yeses, right? Like how do they participate in the same spectrum?
Mm-hmm. I mean, what comes to mind for me is maybe even like a not right now. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like a no, hard no. It could just be like, wait, pause. Okay, now is the right time for this. And so it gets you closer to the full desire. Because if you're like even like a little bit no with like a yes, it's not full yes. Like it's not gonna taste as good as if it's like big yes. So like pausing, even just noticing like the little no's of like, wait a second, I think moves us closer to that like big full yes.
Hmm. Hmm. Whenever I think about this idea of like navigating through the things that have that feel repulsive to me, then I think a lot about how like the nature of desire as something that is involuntary, right? Like it's not something that like I don't want to want the things that I want, right? Like
Yeah.
they it's almost like they want me or something, you know? Like there's something going on here and I don't and by the same token like I don't necessarily want to not want the things that I don't want, right? And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
you know like I don't know about the rest of the world in general, but I know that Americans typically don't do well with desire stuff because there's a certain amount of guilt around it. Like I want this thing and I feel weird about wanting this thing. Like I want to be rich, for example, or I want to be a celebrity. I want attention or something like this, right? And like I feel like I shouldn't. I feel gross for wanting that thing. So I'm gonna pretend like I don't, or something like this. And this can, in fact, get in the way of your magic when you're like trying to do, like you're trying to like cast a spell and be like, all right, bring me the thing, but you're like so conflicted in your heart that
Yeah.
it doesn't come off the way that you want it to. And so this kind of gets me to this place where I'm like, well, is there is there a voluntary element here even? Like do I or am I just like on the conduit? Am I just here like riding the waves?
I think the voluntary aspect comes into either choosing to listen to it or choosing to not listen to it, but I don't like desire feels like it's a being that we're coming into relationship with that has its own like thing. Like you can't like
Hmm.
control it. You can either just like listen to the way that it's landing in your body and like you could choose to take steps towards it or steps away from it. I'm like thinking about like images of like dancing. Like you don't always have to like as a follow, you can kind of push back on the leader and like kind of go the way that you want to go, but that doesn't mean that you're not still dancing. That
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Um, but I do think that there is like an involuntary element to it, but it's just because we exist in like dimensionally different from the being that is desire. Like we can't see the entirety of it.
Yeah, you said time earlier too. You were talking about pauses or like, a timing element to desire. And I wonder if a lot of what feels involuntary is, as you were just saying, a perspective limit. So when I was younger, I grew up kind of a picky eater, right? Like I had certain desires around food, a lot of food I was not interested in, everything else, until I actually encountered growing up in a minister's house, I encountered a missionary. And this missionary was over for dinner, was talking about all the crazy food they had eaten around the world and everything else, and how they felt like a sort of responsibility to be able to eat and enjoy anything offered to them in hospitality, right? Now, I didn't even know that was a concept when I was still a picky eater. I had no exposure to this other idea. But once it entered my frame, I wanted that so much more than I wanted to have control over my food in that sense, right? That I immediately put myself on a task of like, how do I find what is good to eat of anything that comes across my plate? Like, and which my mom thought was great because now I'm just eating broccoli left and right, and she's using this to manipulate me. But like, but the like, but the introduction or seeing a different facet of things you desire, you can, for me, the voluntary is a little bit like you were describing, Marissa, of like, okay, I see this, I can choose to engage at this point in time with it, or I can choose at this point in time to not. I do wonder if sometimes if you say no enough to a certain thing, that it like that it or it just becomes harder to then desire it later, right? Like, you know, I do wonder about that sometimes.
Mm, I don't know.
There we
I don't know
go.
about this.
That's what I'm excited about.
Well, so the place where desire is really laid bare is the bedroom, I feel like, you know? And so if you like in your heart of hearts have homo shit going on and you pretend that you don't and you be like, no, 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 no. Mm-mm, no, 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 no. We're not, no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that shit go away.
No.
I don't think it goes away, but I think you can make it harder to access it. Like, I think if you're like brainwashing yourself, no, 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 all the time, I don't think that's healthy for you. I don't think it's good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Like
think you can lock
it feels
it down.
like it feels like if you're gonna hide something like that away from yourself, you're like you hide it away from yourself like if you were gonna cut your arm off at the shoulder and like throw your arm in the closet and you're like, there we go, we don't have to look at that anymore. It's like, bro, you don't have an arm. Like,
Right.
is it worth it at that point? And yeah, then that just comes down to like context and like building community that accepts your desires too, because that usually makes it a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk some more about homo shit in the bedroom?
Yeah, what you got? Bring it on.
No, it's interesting. For me, that was another slow coming into consciousness effect, right? I had been so conditioned that my homosexual desires were not real or not acceptable or whatever, that I was doing a lot of shit that was clearly, you know, I was looking at gay porn. But I was like, no worries, it's straight. You know what I mean? Like like I was putting lenses on it that allowed me some kind of permission. You know, just like all the other straight boys, just watching a lot of like, you know, dudes in the woods helping each other out. You know, I'm just open minded. You know, I'm just a good liberal white boy. You know, doing my thing, and so it's interesting to see how you can interpret the frame, right? And I do think desire wins out in the long run. Like, I think that what's funny with this conversation, I think we're all like super into desire, but like, I think that it's interesting how you can, what it takes to mask it from yourself, or but even beyond that though, like once you do realize a desire, so let's say you decide, I'm really into dudes now. This is a thing. Giving yourself permission to then find your way through stuff, like that's an interesting process too. Like, you may desire to have these kind of physical relationships, but do you desire to tell everybody that you want to have these relationships?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we tend to think of desire as like a packaged unit. If you like this, then you must like all these other things, right? You're gonna have to watch a lot of RuPaul Drag Race, which you should be doing anyway. But if you like dudes, you should. If you're a dude liking dudes, you should be doing this, you know, automatically.
Yeah. It's an interesting like weaving of like desire and identity, and like
Right.
how I feel like identity can maybe even like hijack a desire and be like, it now must look like this. It's like, that's not the true desire though.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Right. Which is part of the reason why I keep digging to like see what's at the bottom. Like what is this desire really made of? You know?
Yeah.
And that's why I've arrived at this place where it's like, I think it's just the good feeling. Like,
Yeah.
There's nothing else to it at a certain point. It's just all good feeling that you're like trying to move toward.
Mm-hmm. And like, but even then I feel like the good the good feeling is an interesting thing to sit with, because like doing hard things that suck also feel good, but not like in the moment maybe, or like it can like a desire that moves you towards something that is like painful or hard or could even be considered like suffering. It still feels good and it gets sticky there. But I think it still tracks. I think it is still body, like body is feeling good from this. Even if your brain's like, I hate this sucks.
Sure. So here's my solve for that. And it's that on the other side of that thing, you get the really good feeling. You know, it's the ice bath, you know, like if you do say what?
It's the good feeling. You're just a good, you want to have a good feeling.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, it is that good. If you like make it to the other side of the thing, if you sit in this ice bath for 2.5 minutes or however long these crazy dudes are doing it for, then you like get out, and evidently I don't be doing this shit. I don't know, but I hear that they say that it feels like you're on coke all day or something like this. This is the analogy. I don't fucking know, but what I'm saying is you go through the difficulty and then on the other side of that, you get a real good feeling. Right. Or you do something difficult. You spend all day for 3 years working at a job that you hate, but you do that because it's meaningful to you because you've got to pay for your child's whatever, this kind of thing, right? And so being able to do that thing that is meaningful to you gives you the good feeling, and that good feeling drives you through all of the suffering. So let me complicate it a little bit.
Okay.
What about all of those times when I want things that are terrible?
What would you define terrible?
Well, so like, you probably don't do this. I wouldn't expect you or any of the listeners to do this, but I sometimes get caught up in fantasies where I'm fighting with someone, or I'm going through like I'm like engrossed in a terrible argument with someone or something like this. You know what I mean? I'm like really going through it, and I'm just like imagining this fight that probably is not going to happen. That is like I said, this is probably not something that you know about, but for me, I get caught up in this sometimes. And theoretically, I'm sure that you could understand hypothetically what I'm talking about here. So,
yes.
So I definitely do find myself in this place sometimes. And I think that I kind of do want those, you know, like, I wish a motherfucker would. Like, I sometimes do wish that a motherfucker would try me.
Yeah, of course.
and put me into a place that I like kind of hate. I don't actually like fighting, but it doesn't feel good to me.
Now you're just lying to yourself if you're fantasizing about fighting all the time. You're like, I don't like fighting. Like, Zamboni, you do though. Like, you want that chance to like, because it's part of being alive. Like, violence and fighting and passion is part of the ecstatic experience of being alive, and therefore it's part of desire. It swims in that same river. So like, it makes perfect sense to have like, to find yourself like washed in these fantasies of like violence and passion, and like, I wish a motherfucker would like come over here so I can like dance with you. Because we find that like, I mean, animals fucking do this. Like, when a predator goes for prey, like, they're dancing together, and it's violent, and it's gonna kill someone, and it's terrible, but like, it's life, and that's what we're doing. So it's all part of it. It's just ecstasy.
I'm gonna ask something dumb after Marissa's really good comment, but my question is, do you like fighting or do you like winning? Because my question for that is, when you're in the fantasy, how often do you lose those imaginary fights? You know, and
touche.
I've never experienced this. I have no idea what you're talking about. This is an entirely fictional understanding for me personally. But it's a question of like, and you see this a ton with martial arts, right? Like, everybody thinks they can fight until they get punched in the face. And, you know, the line is, you know, really everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. That's the Customato line. But everybody thinks it's fun to get punched in the face. And then you find out who really likes fighting. And I was trying to explain to somebody one time, like the difference between pro fighters and normal human being, your average human being. Like pro fighters like to fight. He's not, I'm fascinated a little bit by a guy named Sean Strickland. He's not what I would call an ethical human being exactly, but he is very weirdly honest about fighting in a way that I think can be useful for people to think with, where he's like, oh, if you are fighting, you got to like getting hit. You got to want to, like, when someone hits you, you got to walk forward and be like, hit me again harder. That's what being a fighter is about. And so he clearly wants to win, but to some extent it doesn't matter to him because the fighting is what he wants, you know? So the reason I bring this up though is to say, like, it's always interesting, particularly with the desires we don't feel totally comfortable with, to then say, wait, what is the desire underneath the desire? Like, what am I pulling out here? Because even winning, okay, I like to win. Well, but at what and why and how? How do I like to win? Because Zamboni doesn't like when I say why, but like, how do I like?
True.
How do I like to
True
win? You know, it's interesting too, because like, you know, do you like to win in that argument in your fantasy by winning someone over? Like where now they're like, oh, you're right. You were always right. I see your point. Or do you like it when they storm off in a huff and you're alone on the field, you know?
That's interesting. That's interesting. So Marissa, you use the term ecstatic and ecstasy here in reference to my terrible fantasies of like argumentation and just terrible fantasies. You called them ecstatic.
Yeah.
So I wonder here, generally when I think of the word ecstasy, then I think like intense joy. But I think what I'm hearing you say here is just the intense part of that. Just like ecstasy and intensity might be kind of the same thing. What do you think about that?
Yes, kind of. Ecstasy is the only word that I have found that gets the flavor of like leaning into life, like being fully present with every moment of life is my understanding of the word ecstasy. And so it doesn't have to be like turned all the way up to 10. It can be like a little whisper of 1 and it can be ecstasy. But like, it's the only word that I found that includes like all of it, like death, fucking, fighting, sadness, joy, wonder, awe, like all of those words live under the umbrella of ecstasy for me.
You're describing ecstasy as a form of connection and to some degree presence, right? So how do those relational components hit for you? So like, is it an awareness of those relations that creates the moment? Is it a presence to that situation?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm always leaning into specifically the relationship that I'm having with the moment, but it's kind of the only way to come into the moment is to start like relating to it.
Right. Yeah. This is something for everybody, just occurred to me. What's something that you were surprised to find was ecstatic for you? Do you know what I mean? Like when you first encountered it, it was something you didn't expect to be ecstatic, and it kind of opened it up for you a little bit. Whenever I drop these kind of questions, and I'm happy to spitball for a second, give people a second to go. But if you got one, Marissa, like, you know, you looked at me like you might have one, so I'll just shut up and let you roll.
I remember the first time, it wasn't the first time that I cried in front of my ancestor altar, but it was a moment that I was crying in front of my ancestor altar, and all of a sudden joy crept in and sat right along the sadness. And I said, this feels so good to cry right now. Like, I'm fucking alive. I'm here. I'm doing it. Like, I'm like grieving, and in the grief there's also joy and like connection with my ancestors, and just like me sitting alone by myself in front of my oven in my apartment, and I'm like, this is it, this is living.
Yeah, one of the ones that caught me like that was now I think of it as a bit of necromancy. At the time, I was just thinking of it as listening to an audiobook, but it was listening to T.E. Lawrence's memoirs, The Seven Pillars of Wisdom. And there's a moment where his friends and his troops, the people he's been with, they come across this place where the enemy, the Turkish army in this case, has done a massacre. And they then find the guys who did the massacre just over the hill. And he just gives him to it. He's just like, take them all out. Like, these guys, like, we're just doing that. And it's a complicated moment for Lawrence. Like he's caught in a weird ecstasy, right? Like this is a weird thing for him. But it was a weird thing for me. What surprised me about it was I'm just listening to someone talk about something that happened to them. Right? I'm actually listening to someone who wasn't there reading the words of someone trying to talk about something that happened to them. And I'm weeping as I'm walking down the street in Syracuse. Like I am so caught up in what's happening to these people that could as well just be completely made up, as far as I know, that something has been triggered in me that I can't. And again, there is a pleasurable, weird joy too in this connection, even though I can't stop crying on the street corner next to the gym, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely had experiences with art this way, where I had some kind of difficult and uncomfortable feeling that that felt painful or something like that. That I put off changing what I was doing in order to listen to the song again, or to sit in that space where I'm like having this extremely visceral experience that like that I don't think feels good exactly, but that I don't want to end for whatever reason. It feels, I think this gets to what you're talking about, Marissa, about like, it feels very vivacious. It feels like I'm alive in that moment.
Why? No, I agree with you. I know exactly what you're talking about. But like, why does this make us feel more alive? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is it about this that really is living? Because I agree it is 100%. I know exactly the moment, but like, why is this something that is the heart of what life is? Like, why is this what we connect to so strongly, as opposed to, I don't know, just like just the feeling good,
I don't think there's words for that. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I mean, because I feel like if I was gonna put a Y on it, I'm like, shut the fuck up, take a bottle of wine up to the top of a mountain and stare at the fucking stars, and just shut up. Just like be alive. Like, it doesn't matter why. You can figure that out when you're dead. Like, you can ask why you went down there in the first place after you die, but right now you're alive. So
Sure. I think there's something. Okay, so with that said, I am going to be an idiot according to Marissa, and I'm going to try to get to the bottom of this. See, this is why I brought you on the show, so that you could call out my bullshit. I'm still gonna talk my shit, but you can call it out the whole way through.
I'm interested to listen. I'm happy to be wrong.
Well,
No, that's the problem. Is neither of us think you're wrong. But
I
we're
don't.
still
Yeah,
gonna pull at this.
right. Exactly. I'm gonna go for it, even though I think you're right. This I think it gets to like the intensity of feeling that gives it that sense of aliveness, right? So there's like there are all these memes out there that's like telling the tech bros that Bitcoin isn't real just to feel something, right? Or something like this, right? Like starting shit so that people will want to fight me just so that I'll feel something, right? Because if I don't feel something, then it doesn't feel worth it to be alive, is like the sort of the subtext of that meme, right? And so because everything must go through a filtered layer of perception and emotion in order for me to experience a thing at all, like it's just got to go through that, then I feel like the emotion is inherent to one's experience of life. And so and by that token, it might be that boredom is a worse fate than pain is, because pain is at least interesting.
Yeah, totally. I'm just like shaking off the life of boredom. I'm like, no.
Sure. I mean, I maybe should meditate more than I do, but
I mean, we all should. That's
embrace the boredom a little bit. Maybe I would be wiser if I did that.
No,
but is it boring? How is it boring if you're sitting there meditating? Like, you've got a whole body to pay attention to. Your body's always doing something. Like, there's not boredom in sitting still and paying attention to your body. That's a type of ecstasy too. That's like just sitting there paying attention. Yeah, like
so the
even
boredom
just like
that I
paying
feel when I
attention to your
sit here
heart.
and be like, try to meditate, that's not a real thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think that's boredom.
What's that feeling that I'm
that you're doing it
it's
wrong?
Discomfort. It's like it's
Right.
like initially it's discomfort, but then that discomfort gets interesting. It's like, why? It's like, well, I would rather be doing something else. It's like, why? Why would you rather be doing something else? Like, what's underneath that? And like immediately you have something to do. You have something to analyze about yourself. Like my mind always finds something to do. Even if it's not necessarily the thing that feels like comfortable, but a lot of the times I find that boredom is discomfort or it's apathy, and apathy is still like that one doesn't feel good either, but if you sit in it for long enough, it also becomes delicious. Like, you also start being like, I don't want to leave this apathy. This apathy feels pretty good. Like, I'm pretty comfortable in this apathy now. Like, I think we can get stuck in any of these places. They can start to feel like warm and fuzzy and good and delicious. And you're like, this prison is amazing. I want to stay here forever. It's like, can't do that. I think that's what comes to mind for me when it's like, lead us not into temptation. I think one of the biggest temptations is like sadness and apathy and suffering, and like, I'm gonna close that prison gate myself and I'm gonna sit right here. Like, it's tempting to do that sometimes, and that's scary.
So that's an interesting run. Like, lead us not into temptation. I like, so what you're saying there too is that these things, almost in the opposite of what we were talking about before, where there are good pleasures to be had through enduring some kind of an ordeal, or even realizing that the ordeal itself can be pleasurable, right? But then there's a sort of danger to pleasure when we attach it to apathy, when we're just like, I will accept this as my warm fuzzy blanket, even though it's destroying me, right?
Mhm.
Or is preventing me from finding other ecstasy, right? How do you go about determining whether something is a good pleasure, right, or a trap?
You can feel it in your body. Like, I think there's a part of me that feels repulsed by the apathy. And like even if I'm sitting there and feeling comfortable, there's always going to be a part of me that's tense or like uncomfortable in like a certain way. That's like, you don't actually want to be doing this right now. This isn't what like your bones want to be doing right now.
So to hear you say that, when I heard you say you can feel it in your body, then and you spoke of repulsion, then going back to what we said before about like desire as a process of discovery, sort of like you got to try it out.
Mm-hmm.
You got to try out the trap and then look around and be like, oh fuck, I'm trapped.
Yeah, wait, hang on, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm always shocked by people who won't try something, like have a real or a real slow to try or contrarian to try kind of situation. Actually, and speaking of traps, I've been spending less time on Instagram because I got trapped in that. Not saying that's a trap for everybody, but I got trapped in it like 2 weeks ago. However, I'm going to take one good thing from there, which is I saw a little meme account called The Holy Knife, and they had a thing up there that just said, so what I'm saying, so what you're saying is we spend our entire life trying to be safe to avoid death. It's that like too safe. I won't. What will happen if I try this? Oh, I could die immediately. Oh no, right? I'm afraid of death. I don't want death.
What I want less than death is embarrassment.
Yes.
Oh my God. I can't eat this weird thing because there's all these people around, and if I crunch on it and it gives me that squishy crunch and I don't know what to do with it, and then I got to spit the thing out into my hand in front of all these people. Oh my God, I'll never live this down.
It's so funny. Like, I was taught how to spit things out politely.
Really?
Yeah.
Like that's a skill you were taught?
It was a skill I was taught. Like, if you have to spit something out at a restaurant, there are correct ways to do this so that it's still polite. So you will not shame people with your horrible spitting out of a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
do tell.
Wait, I'm curious.
What's the tech
way?
here?
Oh, so helps to have a nap. So this presumes you're in a fancy enough place where you have flatware and a cloth napkin, things like this, because like paper ones ain't gonna do it. But like, so you have one of those good thick cloth napkins, and you start to play with it a little bit. Start playing with it a little bit, just like a casual motion, and then you act like you've heard something in the restaurant. You turn and raise it, spit, and put it back in your lap before you complete your turn back. You have to practice this shit. It's gotta look normal.
Wait. You're spitting into the napkin,
into
right?
the napkin.
Because for a second I'm like, you're spitting on the
floor.
Just over your shoulder.
It's just a smoke screen. I'm just like, behold not. I'm hitting a waiter. No, you just turn to look, spit into the napkin, and return it to your.
What do you do with the rest of your napkin though? Like, are you fucked? You're just like, no, I can't wipe my hands.
Well, now
on
you
anything.
ask the waiter for a next napkin, is what you do.
Oh, okay.
Or you have
off.
created. You're doing a little bit of like fucking napkin origami under the table to get it into like a little
Put
corner.
it in like a pocket.
It's in it's like a little corner, and then you can use the rest of the napkin. I swear to God, like my parents spent time teaching me this shit. Which I guess was their desire, was to have a kid who didn't spit stuff out, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
Bring shame to the family.
Yeah, shame and embarrassment. It's we can't live with that. Cannot abide that. Pain, sure. Shame and embarrassment,
Ooh.
I don't think so.
This gets into cringe a little bit too, right?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so not just that there are moments where we can be embarrassed in a way that like maybe we did something dumb, you know, but that there can be something we enjoy doing or can do authentically that other people will then consider to be cringe, and that their idea can get into our head, this is cringe, our own behavior. But like, you know, trying to think of an example off the top of my head, because I'm too cool to do anything that's cringe. So it's
of course.
Yeah, that's never happened to me. I don't know the theory. Poetry is entirely cringe. Everything related to poetry is cringe.
Sure.
I'm gonna stand up in front of strangers and not only just tell you my feelings, but I'm gonna do it in metaphors and possibly rhyming. Yes, and someone's gonna finger snap, which to be fair does make me want to murder an entire crowd of people. Like I do not like that.
Every finger snapper out.
Dude, get the bouncer, get them out.
Word. No, the real worst feeling is secondhand embarrassment. When you're watching someone embarrass themselves and there's nothing you can do. You just have to watch it happen and be like, no, please stop, please stop. Don't do it anymore. Oh no.
There's a great ContraPoints video on cringe, which Jesse got me into, which talks with Lax about this, that too has a pleasure.
Sure.
That second embarrassment is the worst.
Yeah.
But it's pleasurable.
Sure. In the like, I have to talk so much shit now kind of way.
I mean, it's not happening to you. You're not the there's a relief.
Sure.
You know enough to be embarrassed for that person who doesn't know enough to be embarrassed. So that means you're in the in group.
If the other person isn't embarrassed by what they're doing though, and you're feeling it in your body, like doesn't that just suck for you and not for them?
Yeah, right.
No, because it's two-pronged, right? It's both feeling, right? So you're watching someone enthusiastically confess something to another human being that no one should say in public in front of everybody, right? They're not embarrassed. They're just saying this. The person they're saying it to is embarrassed, right? And now you're embarrassed for the person saying it, because that's the thing. But in order to do that, you have to be structurally in such a position that you're smart enough to know that you would never do this. And so the more they do it, the more you're reinforced that you're good. You're the person who wouldn't do this. You're in the group. You're cool. You're not like this other loser who's currently embarrassing things.
And the real pleasure comes from eye contact with the other person in the in group.
Yeah.
We're like, do you see this wild shit going on right now? Can you believe it?
To be fair, that is a really great pleasure when you can catch the eye of like a friend and be like, like at a family dinner. When your uncle is just saying some off the chain incredible shit. You're like, oh my God.
Right. Yeah, there's one other person who sees it going down, and that person is like, now you're on a team.
Right.
Yep.
That connection again.
Yeah, you're on that ride together.
So I think there's different steps along the way with this stuff, right? Like before I did a bunch of desire work and like really, which I think is a really beautiful practice, right? Like with its own intense levels of embarrassment and problems. But like before I did any of that kind of stuff, I would still think about having, quote, guilty pleasures.
Hmm.
That has shifted a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I really feel guilty about my pleasure. There's some I don't like, to your point earlier, Zamboni. Like, there's some stuff that I'm like, I'm not sure I like that,
Mhm.
you know. But they're in a continuum of understanding my desires for me now. Like, they're not just like this, oh Lord, I have sinned and wash me clean, which is its own sadomasochistic pleasure. But like, so does your relate? How do you guys sit with the idea of a guilty pleasure? Like, how does that work in your way of thinking, this cultural construct of the guilty pleasure?
I mean, it's fun to be sneaky. That kind of, I feel like it has that same kind of pleasure of being like, I'm gonna get away with this.
Mm.
I like the idea of a sneaky pleasure, actually, because it's kind of just for me in some ways, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like if you take the guilt off of it, if it's just like, this is a thing that I enjoy doing by myself with my body and no one else around. Just because I like to do it by myself.
oh, yeah. I'm not just excited because we're talking about masturbation. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, eating donuts alone by myself at 2 a.m. The
While
Doing what with
masturbating.
donuts?
dude, until you met the right Boston cream, you haven't met anybody. Like, I like the idea of a furtive pleasure, right? Like, I know it sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds great. But like, you want it to be hidden. It's fun to hide it. It's fun to, so like something that previously it was like, oh, this is my guilty pleasure. Now there's a pleasure in like, oh, it's just for me. It's secret. I get away with this.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Getting away is its own kind of pleasure. Cause when you get away with it, you skirt the boundaries of the authority. There's an authority who thinks you shouldn't do whatever thing it is. And maybe you want to do that thing, or maybe you don't even really give a shit about that. But you know that the authority thinks that you shouldn't. And so when you go to do the thing, and then you get away with it, then there's a thrill that goes along with that can even incentivize the thing that you otherwise may or may not actually care about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like a freedom thrill. Like just for a second, you're like, I'm me. Nobody can fucking tell me what to do.
Okay, so the freedom pleasure, that where no one can tell me what to do. That's another one that I get into trouble with, because my addictive pleasures are this way. You know what I mean? Like, I'll smoke whatever kind of drugs I want to smoke because nobody can tell me not that they're, you know what I mean? Like, nobody can stop me because I'm grown. I pay my own rent. I do whatever I want in my own home. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
I can do that. And then sometimes I find that, like, because I smoke too much weed, and so I find myself I find myself smoking weed as a way to exercise my freedom. Like, especially if I've been at the job or something like this, or at some kind of event where I've got responsibilities, or I've got other shit that I've got to be doing. I'm under the eye of some people or something like this, and and then I sort of like get away from that for whatever moment, and then find myself smoking whether or not I really want to be high. And in fact, I've been in situations where like I was having a rough time at work or whatever, and then get a little moment to myself and then smoke something and then have to go back to work and then be high at work and be like, this is not better. This is not, now I have to pretend like I'm not high in addition to all the other things that I was doing. You know what I mean? So
Just tripled my workload.
exactly. I've absolutely done this. Again, listeners at home will have no idea what I'm talking about, but I run into this problem fairly frequently, and I get myself into trouble this way by being like, I'm grown, I can do whatever I want, or like stay up too late. Let me not go to bed on time because like nobody can tell me what to do.
Well, it's interesting because like you even said you're like, I'm gonna do this thing even though I know I don't want to do it. So you have to like it's figuring out which part of your body is kind of the authority on desire. Like who do we listen to and who do we not listen to around here about what we want? Because there's a lot of voices. There are so many things. They're like, you want this, or you want this, and you want this. And it could be like your ancestors, it could be society, it could be like the you that you think that you should be, that everyone thinks that you are, but you're not. Like you have to find the like true channel that desire comes through. And then like how to hear the yes and how to hear the no. And then that's your compass. And you say fuck you to every other voice that comes in. It's like, this is what you want. And you're like, no, it's not, because I know where to listen from.
Ooh, that's really fun in this context too, right? Because you're talking about true compass and saying fuck you to everything that isn't the compass, right? That isn't the we'll say the process of enlivening the deeper, freeing, good desire, for lack of I know wait, I said the good word, but we can skip that one, say, buddy. I just thought the feel good one. But to what's interesting in this context is that is reflective. It's a cool twist on the same thing. So you could see on the one hand an awareness of your true compass as authority. And so then the pleasure of the fuck you, I'll do whatever I want is a rebellion against that. But what you just said was actually the other thing, that all the other stuff is trying to establish an authority on you. And the true compass is the one that says, fuck you, I'm free. Right. So whenever we get, it's a great example of the traps, right? Where you suddenly are like, this rebellion over here that isn't actually the freedom I'm seeking, it's just some kind of rebellion. You know, I'll settle for that today, you know, instead of doing the hard work of getting to whatever really makes you freer. You know, but it's funny that now you got me thinking about demons, because like that to me is a really interesting demonic trick, right? In the sense of like, I'm going to take this very healthy thing that says fuck you to whatever keeps me from being free, and I'm going to make you think this thing that's chaining you is actually making you free, so you go with that.
Yeah.
Well, because there is a kind of freedom to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you get to choose. Like you get to choose whether or not you listen to the demon voice. That's the beauty of being alive. Is you get to choose that one. But you learn something interesting here, is that you have a desire for rebellion. You desire to say fuck you to something. And like you just have to figure out where that energy like wants to go in a way that like lines up with that spot in your body that is like the authority on your yes.
How do you feel the authority on your yes for you? Like, how is that? What's that process
Practice.
like for you? How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
I feel like my yes and my no a lot, sometimes in different places in my body. But recently I've been experimenting with the like right where my sacral chakra sits, that space as like the authority on yes and no. and I've gotten it in a very crude way at the advice of spirits. They were like, listen to your pussy. It'll tell you everything you need to know about what you want in life. And I'm like, okay, totally. But like, you have to actually learn like what the real yes is and what the trick yes is and what the I feel like genitals can be co-opted by demons pretty easily. But yeah, most of
if people are just listening, Zamboni and I are just nodding. Genitals can be co-opted by demons quickly. Just keep preaching. Yep.
But what I have noticed is fairly consistent, no matter the part of my body that I'm listening to, is that a no feels like tightening and a yes feels like expanding and like loosening, softening.
I think about that with my heart too. Those feelings where you feel small-hearted, you feel mean-spirited. You know what I mean? Like you said something to somebody and you're like, man, that's not making the world bigger and better. You know what I mean? Like that was small, right? Like that was, and then when you do something good, even if it surprises you that it's a good thing, right? You feel opened up, like the world is more possible.
It's funny that bigger seems to be better here. Which is something that I typically resist.
Brian is dead.
But I really got him with that one.
I'm still 8 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, look,
I resist it too.
It's the way you use it. Come on.
Please make your actually valid point.
No, the other day I was listening to one of my favorite science podcasts, and I was like, I've been listening for like 3.5 hours and no one has made a dick joke yet. And they kept talking about vitamin D. And so they kept talking about like the D from the sun and all this. I was like, you guys, please. What are you doing here? How are you leaving this much power on the table? Why would you do this? The D is right here in front of you. Maybe you should grab it.
They're just edging you the whole podcast. You're like, please, someone.
Truly. And they refused. They did not go there.
Oh my God.
Horrible.
And I honestly lost respect for them when they did I feel like you should take a dick joke if it's just right here for you.
Yep.
You should do it.
Well, it does say something about there's an argument there that they won't do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They know. You know what I mean? Like they know, and they're not doing it because of they want to come off a certain way. You know what I mean? They want to be separate from everybody in their audience who's currently making 13 dick jokes the entire time while they're talking. They want to be they want to be like they're above it.
Right.
Yeah.
I did wonder if they genuinely didn't notice the dick jokes. Though.
That is possible.
It is possible, right? Because they're like,
which is weird. It's weird that that's possible,
right? But I just have to remember that other people live in different ways that are completely unimaginable to me. There are also cannibals in the world. Like, I don't have to understand it. I just have to know that it is a real thing and that there are people out here who hear that you should eat D in the morning and who don't think that that's a dick joke. I don't understand, but I don't have to understand. I'm not the universal arbiter. But what I'm trying to get to, after you so childishly took me down this road.
You're welcome.
Which all I'm saying is bigger is not always better. There's a point at which there's more dick than you want.
Yes.
And so this is just like an always, all the time principle. But what I'm hearing and what I also understand to be true is that if in your body you have a feeling of bigness and expansion, then this is understood to be a yes. And if you get a feeling of smallness or contraction, then that is understood to be a no.
Mm-hmm. I don't
Let
know
me
if bigness is the same as expansiveness. Whoa, there was a horn honk right outside of my window when I said that. Because like, just because you open or expand from a tight place doesn't necessarily mean that you're like getting really big. And like open, soft, I think is the best one. Like soft, open, spacious, I think.
Relaxed.
Yeah, relaxed. Yeah. Better than,
see.
because like expansive still has that like you're pushing on yourself just in a different direction, whereas like contraction you're pushing yourself, like in expansion you're pushing yourself out, but like just resting in center, I mean like soft, relaxed, open.
You just kind of Tai Chi schooled me, which is annoying. Because, in that context, expansion and contraction are two parts of the movement, right? It doesn't matter, right? You have to be able to contract, you have to be able to expand. But what you don't want is the sort of hardness that is brittle, right? That is that like ill-tempered steel. What you're looking for is a relaxedness. And, there's 5 qualities that you're supposed to maintain regardless of expansion or contraction, right? And soft is a key moment, so that even when you're contracting, it's soft. So in some ways, thinking again about our repulsion and two, right? Do you feel a difference between a soft no and a brittle no, in the sense of like maybe that's connected to that pause idea you were having earlier too, of like you can have a sort of like, oh, I acknowledge that I'm not drawn here, but it does not give me that brittle feeling, the tightness,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about like even the ways that the body will respond to something like that. Because if it's like a soft like pause, no, I'm thinking about like the fascia. It'll still be like soft and relaxed and kind of just like taking a pause, noticing it's kind of like reached an edge and we're taking a pause. But if it's a hard no, it starts to knot up like this, and it's like trying to open your own fist, like it's not gonna happen unless you like break your hand open. And it does, which is an interesting, like you can't, the first time I did this, like when you pull on your hand like this, like it doesn't want to do that. But if you do this with your hand, you start to like kind of softly, like your hand just starts to open. And that's like a no and a yes, like in your hand, like this is like no, and it's like, oh yeah, like even if it's like, I don't know, maybe, oh yeah, totally.
This seems also like pretty good tech for getting to yes. Like in if you're trying to be persuasive in some kind of way, or you're trying to I often think about like puppet master style power, where like I'm gonna get you to do a thing, but I'm gonna make you think it was your idea to do it. And
Yeah.
this is, if you do it of your own volition, or you think it's your own volition, then you're very likely to do a good job doing the thing, rather than being spiteful toward me for like making you do it. And so I think about this kind of move all the time. Like how do we get to that place where the things that I want to happen are simply happening, and I don't have to like mandate it or something like this. And so there's a so it seems like there's a bit here of tech around like a soft touch.
Yeah, like an invitational touch. Like if you like put your hand out and kind of let the other hand like meet that hand, you can. I'm feeling it's like my hand wants to like rest and I can feel it moving even towards. So like you okay, so I think the movie is Hitch, that Will Smith movie. That's the one that came to mind for me. When he's teaching the dude how to kiss, and he's like, you go 90%, and then you let her come to 10. So you like invite the person up, and then you let them move towards you. And I think one of the most important pieces here is that you have to be prepared for the other person to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes it's just a no. And so you put your invitation somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Right, because if you don't allow for the no, you cannot get the full good yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in the context of argumentation or seduction as argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to respect the other person's personhood in order to fully actually bring them over, right? Like you have to want them to be a full person in order to have their full powers and to be on your side and all this kind of stuff. It's a really kind of lovely, we think about like how anarchy talks about power, or how anarchy talks about, all compulsion is violence, right? That, in order to do that, you must be brave enough to risk that you won't get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Or even maybe that's first stage. Maybe second stage is realizing that you just flat out don't want something that isn't the full-hearted yet, full-throated yes. Like anything else is unsatisfactory anyway. You don't want that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's like I'm like feeling the tickle of like we could go into like a weird dark place for people that are like, well, I want the husk of a human. I don't want them to be in their full yes. I just want them to do what I say. And I'm like, not really interested in that flavor of magic.
No,
Because it
that's for
probably
sure.
wouldn't feel as good. Like, I don't think that would feel as good to my body if there's like not the other body that's involved is like also not a full yes. It's not as fun.
I think magically, so there's a lot of like sort of obvious discourse around love magic. I think we have probably as a culture have moved to a better understanding of love magic than the 14th century grimoire approach of make naked ladies dance in front of you with demons. I think we've probably in the magical community at least talked about moving in a different direction.
All you have to do is ask.
I do love the clerical underground, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of like monks and shit getting together and be like, how do we make them dance naked? We have to conjure up Beelzebub.
Just ask and bring the wine. Come on.
Yeah. But I got distracted by naked ladies and wine. I'm gonna be honest, I lost a little of the thread there. But it's embedded in a lot of the stories that are the legends we work with now in some ways, like Cyprian's failure to win over Justina is exactly the same kind of thing. Like the devil's like, man, I don't even do that.
Can you tell this story? I don't know this story.
Oh,
and I'm going to assume that a bunch of listeners haven't heard it as well.
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah. So through Rune Soup and through Gordon, I learned about Saint Cyprian, and in my particular practice with Saint Cyprian, I focus with the balance between Saint Cyprian and Saint Justina. Okay. So the story is Cyprian is this, and by the way, Cyprian connected to Cyprus, connected to Venus. Like this is actually a part of it. But Cyprian is this magician who has trained in all the arts of magic all over the world. He's studied weather working in the place where they're great at weather working. He studied love magic at the places they're good at love magic. He's done everything. And he's this supremely powerful figure. And he works with the devil and devils. It's it's a Christian story. So, he's got all these spirits under his command. And one day, a guy hires him, young man hires him to make Justina a pious Christian woman. But like when you really read the story, it's like a Christian magician, like a fucking like mystic, powerful woman that this rich asshole wants to have sex with, and she's told him no. He's like, I'm not interested in your wealth, your power, your, I presume, good looks. Fine, I'm not interested in any of it. You get lost. So he comes to Cyprian and hires Cyprian, and Cyprian's like, great, day one, get some. Let's just do some straight up love magic. He drops off like a little love filter or whatever, and Justina receives it. She makes the sign of the cross, turns to water. She drinks it. She's like, next. And Cyprian's like, okay, all right. I see how this is going. All right, well, I'm gonna level it up a little bit here, And so he convinces all of her maids and all the people around her to just talk how great this guy is all the time. Oh, you should totally be with him. Her father comes down and is like, I've set up a marriage contract with you, this guy, and everything else. And Justina just makes the sign of the cross, and everybody's like, oh yeah, you're right. That guy's a dick. Why were we talking about this? And Cyprian's like, this is starting to get kind of, all right, okay, fine. We're gonna do the big thing. So he conjures a demon to go and force Justina to give her body to this man, to literally just drag her out of her bed and hold her down and throw her in front of this guy. And she gets there. The demon gets there. Justina makes the sign of the cross. The demon repents and decides to follow the ways of Christ and love and everything else. The demon's straight up out of hell. It's done. So Cyprian calls in the devil and it's like, this is some bullshit, because we had a deal where you told me that I could have whatever I wanted if I did this magic the way that you wanted, if I did this stuff. And so far, this lady's just kind of making a hand gesture and nothing's working. And the demon and the devil goes, well, there are some stipulations to the contract. If you look real close there, it's not everything's covered by this. And Cyprian is enraged and says, well, then I won't serve you anymore. This is bullshit. And he goes and he finds Justina. And what he says is, I have done everything I know in my power to control you. To do this stuff is worthless. You've shown me that it's worthless. And he throws himself at her feet and he says, what will you teach me? How to live like you live. And then the official story kind of goes in some different varieties, depends which one you read. There's a bunch of different versions. But what I like, the version I like to think with, and that for me is part of my patronage, is that she does take him in. She does teach him. She becomes an abbess. He becomes a monastic, later on to become a priest. And they become a pair, actually, for the rest of the time they're together, working together. And in my version, he is always in submission to the love that she shows him. The love she teaches him is what he gives himself and devotes himself to. And in the end, they're martyred together. And in the official version, they do lots of miracles before that happens, right? Miracles here, miracles there. But to me, what happens is actually all those magical arts that he learned are now put in the right service. He's now doing all these things in the way that brings them to life and brings them to their full power, because he's doing them out of love and in willingness and understanding, right? So that's the story of Cyprian and Justina, as far as I know. And then there's all kinds of graveyard books and black dogs, and he gets all the way over to South America and shit. It's fun from there. But
cool. So what's the point you were trying to make?
You asked me to tell a story. I don't remember what I was starting with. No, he tries in magic. We now have a story that is pretty wide. There's a lot of people who have some kind of Cyprian devotion, and the core of that story is how forcing people to do things is stupid and doesn't work the way you think it works, right? So that's embedded now in the way we think with these stories. That was the point I was trying to make. And I think there's a truth there too. Yeah.
When I think about control, I sometimes think about that same thing that I talked about the last time we were on this podcast. We were talking about like slavery as a thing, as a sixth house situation like slavery as a thing that's going to fuck your shit up. And so there's this idea of like having and driving and controlling slaves, but that being a whole bunch of work that you didn't necessarily bargain for. That like it's the tighter your reins are, the more that you have to like put of yourself into that, and the more tension that's going to exist in your own space, in your own body, that can then go on to harm you because you are like exercising control rather than, I don't know, not
Yeah.
persuading,
Yeah. Extending invitations.
extending invitations. Yeah, that's real good.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, I mean, I've been like it is fascinating to me how many iterations there are of human beings. Like everybody is so different from each other and it's incredible. Like people's like truest heart's desires all over the place. There are as many as there are humans. And like there are people who find great joy in like building things, maintaining systems, like making sure that larger things like work together. Like they're like, I do this one thing and I do it so well and I want to do it until the day that I die. And like when you invite people into a system like that, it flourishes and prospers, and it doesn't require one person like holding on to people being like, you do this and you do this, you do this, you do this. If everybody's doing exactly what they want to do, there's nothing that can stop that. Like it runs on desire, and that's so incredibly powerful. Like I frequently dream about what that world looks like, where every single person is following their truest heart's desire. And in a weird way, I think it is literally written into Christianity that like when they talk about like follow the will of God, like the will of God is literally your heart's truest desire, because Jesus is like, God is inside of you, he sits in your heart, you follow your heart, you're following the will of God. It is your true desire, and it is literally your truest desire. It's not like in the context of what the 10 Commandments says is the right thing to do. Like the 10 Commandments are just suggestions for like, you keep asking me for what should I do? What should I do? I don't know. Try these 10 things. Try these 10 practices. See where it takes you. But like the practice of learning to listen to your desire and learning to follow your yes is the practice. Everything else is just bullshit suggestions. Like, I don't know, maybe this will get you there. But I think the path is following that yes. And if it's like the thing that I don't have words for how much I want for that world where everybody is following that yes, because I think it would be absolutely incredibly breathtakingly beautiful.
Do you think there's room in that world for it to turn into the place where it's like, like for a while I was working with Chinese medicine a lot, and one of my teachers and acupuncturists was like, listen to your body. Your body knows. Listen to your body. Mm-hmm. And so I thought I was very clever and started saying that. And so I was like, listen to your body. And my friend was like, listen, man, my body wants 45 cupcakes. Like, I don't know what you think is going on out here, but like, if I just let my body have it, then it's not going to go good. You know what I mean? So, so whenever I think about this kind of vision of like, okay, all the people are like following their truest desires, does this ever lead to sloth or like other sort of hedonism, we could say? I've been accused of being a hedonist on this podcast. I don't think that is a particularly good way to describe how I get down with my relationship to pleasure and whatnot. But like there's a kind of hedonic trade-off, you know what I mean, where if you like go for the 45 cupcakes, then you end up paying a price for that doesn't feel so good later. Which I think is consistent with what I say about like if you follow the good feeling, then it's in fact not going to take you to 45 cupcakes because you're going to find yourself with a stomach ache, which is going to be not pleasurable, right? But that notwithstanding, I wonder if there's this place where I wonder if there's ever a need to regulate or to place some boundaries on the truest heart's desire. You know what I mean? Like if I just followed my truest heart's desire, would I do hard things?
Yeah, I think you would, because your body, like you have to surrender entirely and completely to the desires of your body. Because if you don't, like it creates its own boundaries, it creates its own path. Like the river is naturally going to flow where it flows to. And like maybe there is going to be a day where you eat 45 cupcakes and it's exactly what you're supposed to do that day, lines up perfectly with your body. And the next day you hike up a mountain and like you need anything that's in your body at that point. Any calories will help. You're hiking a fucking mountain. And then like after you hike the mountain, you sleep for a week because you just hiked a fucking mountain. Like it's following the natural rhythms and desires of your body. And you just have to fully let go and fully trust them. Because if you're scared, you're like, oh, but if I eat the 45 cupcakes, then it's not going to be good and it's not going to, you have to let go. You have to fully open up and just like lean into it. And if you're like, mentally, you're like, I have the idea to eat 45 cupcakes, you hit the 36, your body says, you know what, actually, I'm good. You stop. 36 cupcakes. It's not 45. Like, it's always coming back to the yes and the no's of your body.
Well, I like the idea of the listening as you go, right? Where like, that much of our difficulty lines up along the same path of an artificial enforcing of a thing, right? Like I said, I was going to do 45. That's it. I feel like shit, but I'm going to keep going until I hit that. And I think about this actually with lifting, right? That you got dudes who go into the gym and they're like, today's PR day, man. You're like, could be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, could be. But you go in, all of a sudden your knee's not in the right spot. You don't feel your back's a little tight and everything else. I actually was listening to a guy talk about rest with lifting, right? And he was like, okay, so you're doing a squat, right? You're working on your quads, right? Trying to get that good burn in there. So you do the first set, feels great. You got the shaky legs. You did a good job, but you want to rest a little bit. And you're like, I want to do that again. Rest a little bit. It's like you have to rest until your supporting muscles are rested. Because the limiting factor might now be your lower back. Your lower back's still tight, you're not rested. You have to learn to, and you have to learn this. You have to learn to listen to get what you want, And I like the idea that along whatever desire path we take, you got to keep listening along the way because it's going to change. The getting of any part of your desire is going to change how you feel at that moment about the next thing you get.
Consistent evaluation seems like such an important thread. Seems like the thread to follow. That's kind of what you guys have been talking about this whole time about like checking in with your body and such, right? Like that is an evaluation, a certain sense of like, okay, what's happening here and how do I actually feel about it? And then take one more step and be like, okay, so how do I feel? What's going on here? Consistently like evaluating and gaining a sense of what is valuable or desirable based on where I am now.
Yeah. I think about like I think cats are a very good teacher of this. Because like if a cat will like open itself up and want to be pet in a certain way, and they're like, yep, until it's no, and then they're like, nope, not anymore. Now it's a no. And they're like, okay, now it's a yes again. And like just being so incredibly aware, cats are so aware of their yeses and their nos in every moment. They're not even like evaluating or thinking, they're just acting from them. They're like, yes, nope.
That was great. I like it so much. I'm biting you. Nope, I'm done with biting you. Now I'm just gonna go hide where you can't find me.
Yeah, existing in this sort of continuum of evaluation also seems like an important way to approach a magical practice when sort of deciding what to aim the magic at and what to try to accomplish, you know? Because I think a lot about, you know, there's the sort of idea of like shoot for the moon and maybe you'll land amongst the stars, right? So it's this idea of like begin with the end in mind, keep your eye on the prize, all this sort of thing, right? And so then if you like, but then there's also like you can imagine your destination and you can imagine the end point, which is so delightful to think about at least. But then I've got to start from here. I've got to start from where I actually am. I can't, there's no zipping to that place. And so, you know, so if I want to be movie star, let's say, this is the wrong time in history for that. But
first start off with time travel.
Right, for sure. But so, you know, like it, but if I am not doing movie star things, then I've got to like sort of get myself onto the path where that is even plausible in the first place. So there's a sense of like I really have to start where I am. And that a lot of times when I'm like imagining the things that I like or desire or that would be pleasurable to me, and then to sort of like come back to, okay, so how do I get on the trajectory toward that? It gets real uncomfortable. I don't like it.
Oh, yep.
It
Yeah,
sometimes
I mean
stops. I'm sorry, continue.
I'm just thinking that's like the soft cozy prison. You're like, I think I'll just close the door, stay right here.
The first time I remember thinking with this consciously was when I was I was a weird kid. I read Sun Tzu very young and continued to read Sun Tzu a lot. But he has know yourself and know your enemy and you'll win 1,000 battles. But like the first part of that is the know yourself. And like he taught, it's very clear you got to take a rigorous assessment of where you're at. You don't walk in and try to slap the champ day one. You know what I mean? Like, well, you can, but you're gonna learn a lot
It
real
would be
fast.
so good to watch. Yeah, exactly. That's a way to fuck around and find out.
Speaking of that, there's a video of a dude trying that out with Sean Strickland, actually, which is it's worth thinking with what that means. Not uncomplicated, but yeah, you will be so much stronger though from that clear evaluation of like good and bad. Like, oh, you know, of if movie star. Well, am I one of them super pretty Brad Pitt kind of movie stars, or am I more of a like Paul Giamatti kind of movie star? Like sure. I might need to take some different paths if I'm a Paul Giamatti movie star, right? But you'll get to movie star faster if you don't spend half your time thinking you're Brad Pitt,
And play your role, like explore your niche, get real good at the thing that you are good at.
Yeah, get really good at being you. Following your yes.
Sure.
What's really funny is the entire jester quality that you're throwing out of like, yeah, yes, like fully knowing that like that's like years of work. You know what I mean? Like that's
It is.
Right.
It
It's-
takes like it's a practice. Like we're
Yeah.
not. It should be something that we're taught how to do from the moment that we're born, is follow our yeses, but we're not. That's not the world that we live in right now. The world that we live in right now is like, yeah, you got a big yes going through your body. We're gonna tell you to say no to that, and you're gonna have to keep saying no to that, and it just fucks us up. Like it's a, I think of this practice of following your yes as like a remembering, because it's what we're born to do. We just have to remember how to do it, and because of the context we're in, it's pretty fucking hard to do, but we can do it. We know how to do it. You just have to practice.
You are reminding me of an event that happened in my family last summer, which was illustrative of a lot of things. But my little nephew, we were having s'mores, right? And my little nephew had eaten two, you know, and he was like, he walked up to my mom. He was like, "Hey, can I have another s'more?" Right? Like, and there's lots of things she could have said, like, well, do you want to take a couple minutes and see how you feel? You know, we don't have enough for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, we got to make sure there's enough for everybody. You know, a lot of things she could have said. What she actually said was, you don't really want that. And that was a lie. His little body at that particular moment, he wanted that s'more 100%. That's why he brought it up.
Yeah.
He has done everything he can to demonstrate, Grammy, that he would like another s'more, you know. And there's a big difference between teaching a kid how to listen to themselves. And, you know, again, not trying to pat myself on the back here, but one thing that we always tried to do with my son was give him that moment. And then if he was like, yes, I do want another s'more, be like, okay, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, on that same event, we had a contrasting thing. So Wyatt decided on that one that he was going to make what he called the perfect s'more, which was a s'more that instead of graham crackers, you put a cupcake around. And he made this and he ate it, right? And he was in kid sugar heaven. Like he was just great. And then about 15 minutes later, he was like, oh man. And he laid down on the picnic table and he's like, I gotta take a nap. You know, like I was like, go ahead, do your thing. And I got up, I was like, what do you think about cupcakes more? And he's like, it was good once. Like you know, he was cleared. He's like, I'm glad I did it. I'm done. I can't look at food. And but it was such a, he and I had that interaction first, and then my mom and my nephew had their interaction. So it was this nice little contrast. But like even well-meaning people, like our society has twisted people to be well-meaning about gaslighting people out of their desires or lying to them about their desires. Right? They think that's a virtue that they're doing. My mom 100% thought she was looking out for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know. But there's a lot of harm there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes the only way to learn is to get the tummy ache. And also, it was worth it to do once. It's like, I'm going to remember that. That was great. Cupcakes more? Good idea. Once. Never again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna steel man your mom's position here for a second.
Go ahead.
All right. So, homie, how old is he?
He was 8.
All right. So homie's 8 years old, and he's had 2 s'mores. I've witnessed him tear apart 2 s'mores.
Yeah.
And he comes up and he's like, "Yo, I want a third s'more." And so, if we define desire as an attraction toward the good feeling and a repulsion from the bad feeling,
Sure.
then if I'm like, homie, you don't want that, then encoded in that is this is not taking you toward the good feeling. I promise. It looks like it's going to take you toward the good feeling. That's not going to take you toward the good feeling. You're going to have some bad feelings after this.
So to do that well, though, in a way that respects him,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, so if you want to take that approach, what I think you have to say in that case is you might get a stomach ache. Like, you know, you can raise an awareness for him. Like, hey, I've been here before, been around the road. I want to raise the idea that, like, you might run into something painful on the other side. Do you still want it? Right? Because there's a difference between denying what he feels and screwing up his ability to discern properly, and sharing wisdom and flagging that, like, in case no one's told you yet, you may not have all the facts on the ground here. You know.
Okay, that's a good point.
And then you have to respect his autonomy and being able to say, like, great, worth it, tummy ache. And then he gets the tummy ache and he's like, you're right, I'm gonna go take a nap.
And I think that's the piece, because you said earlier, Marissa, too, about, like, we kind of have to be willing to risk that people are going to do things. Do you know what I mean? That like, and in that case, I think there is a lot built into my mom's position of, if I don't stop this now, he's going to be 700 pounds and a failure to society. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's that kind of coding in the back of her head. Yeah.
True. Also, maybe she's like, if I don't stop this right now, then he's going to get a tummy ache, and then I am going to have to deal with that shit. He's going to be a real asshole to me until his tummy feels better. Who knows when that's going to be?
Sure. And again, I think that case, because I do think that adults expressing their desires to children is also very useful, you know, in the sense of, like, so if she had said, by contrast, I know you're not going to listen to this, Mom, but I'm really not picking at you that much. But but you've been a good example here, so thank you. But if she had instead said, you might get a tummy ache, and he's like, I am down for tummy ache, and she said, I am not down later to take care of you. So you might get a tummy ache, and if you do, you're going to be responsible for that. I'm going to sleep. You know, again, she's providing information. She's given truth, and but I think there needs to be room, because I think there's an assumption that we do have to then just tolerate whatever the results of somebody else's decisions are. And I think you're raising a good point that no, we don't actually have to do that. In fact, we probably shouldn't if it's against our desire to do so. And, you know, with children, we have some degree of responsibility of care, you know, like that, like, it is a thing. But I do think that nothing here is life-threatening. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Right. He's fine to understand these things and to learn them this way. In the same way that Wyatt was fine to lay on that table and think some deep thoughts about the psychedelic amount of sugar he ate.
Right. Totally. Well, so thinking with this sort of, like, cultural landscape that we exist part of, I exist in a body which has been trained in all of these same ways, and so I don't necessarily know how to just follow my yeses, especially since I got bills to pay and shit like this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I spend a lot of time saying no to what are probably real yeses in my body, being like, maybe I'm gonna go to work instead. How about that? Or, you know, these kinds of things. And so I think, given that cultural landscape, then one of the best things that we have available to us is divination. Like, it's a really good tool to be able to, like, look inside oneself and to, like, figure out, like, okay, what do I think about this actually, or how do I feel about this, and then see the card and be like, I do think that, don't I? Okay. Woo. Yeah, thanks for saying so.
Yeah.
So, Marissa, you are a diviner too, as well, right?
Mhm.
What's your craft? What do
Yes.
you do?
I am a geomancer. I do geomancy divination. Most of the divination I'm doing right now is on the Twitch stream that I do on Mondays at 5 or 5:30 p.m. PST.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
And your Twitch
yeah,
handle is what?
Planet Destroyer 54.
Hmm.
Um, and what I have found, particularly with geomancy, and like me and Brian have had conversations about this, is that like you have to know what you want before you ask geomancy the question, because otherwise Uncle Geomancy is gonna look at you and be like, yeah, try again.
So geomancy is not good divination for finding out what you want. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I I don't think so. I don't think it's good to ask Uncle Geomancy what you should do. Um, I'm not sure what would happen if you asked, "What do I want?" I feel like I can kind of feel the chart getting thrown in my face. It's like, I don't fucking know, go figure it out. Come back. Like there are better ways to figure out what you want than geomancy, definitely. Like most of the time before, um, if someone brings a question to me that is very much a should, I'm like, well, what you can't ask this random divination system, should you do this? Because you're giving away all of your power and all of your agency. What do you want? And it's a lot of desire workshopping before we get to the question of like, how then do we get this thing that we want?
Which is why I would argue slightly it's actually a really great system for finding out what you
Mm,
want.
hmm
But it doesn't happen in the throw, right? You're going to
hmm
need to sit down and actually do desire work before you approach the oracle. If
hmm
you want an answer that, as Marissa was saying, that isn't just like, uh, you know, should I get this? And it's like, yeah, probably. I don't know. You should.
Like, yeah, sure.
Whatever. Sounds like, should I get a car? Sounds like, what's the outcome of me thinking I should get a car? Probably you're going to get a car.
Yeah,
Like it,
it's like asking the stranger at the end of the bar like what you should do with your whole life. And they're gonna be like, I don't fucking know. Why not this?
yeah,
Like, I'm 5 beers deep.
yeah.
Whatever.
Hmm.
But because of that, that requirement to sit and either with a friend or yourself or with if you're getting a reading from Marissa, which I would highly recommend because she's an excellent geomancer, um work the chance to sit down and workshop out your question is itself a really, really fruitful practice. And so that moment of restriction, I think, is really a useful thing. And then I feel like where it answers is in patterns, right? So it's very good about revealing like th- things that are patterns in the universe, like the alchemy of how the universe works. So you get down to like, okay, I feel like I want a car. What's the easiest way for me to get a car? The answer that's provided in that reveals a pattern and reveals that sort of informational exchange I was talking about with my nephew. Actually, in a way, it's like, well, the easiest way to get it is to steal it from your neighbor, and you're like, well, I don't want to do that, and so you get into this reciprocal thing where by the end of the process, you actually have a really clear path and a really good understanding of what's going on.
Yeah. And magic to do.
And magic to do, yeah, it's very
Hmm.
prescriptive.
Hmm
So, okay, so you're saying here that you like I'm trying to think about what good questions to ask to geomancy are.
hmm
Because like I frequently don't know what the fuck I want. And
hmm
you are making me afraid to ask geomancy about it. So because I don't feel no type of way about asking cards. Cards will tell me what I'm thinking without
hmm
thinking twice about it. They'll be like, there it is.
hmm
And or if I have a should I question, then I can just reframe it to like, what happens if I X,
Yeah.
and
That's what
then
I would
it'll
do
show
with
me.
geomancy. It's what happens if I do this? And you're like, I don't want that. It's like, there, now you know what you want. Not
Hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Next
I am
step.
repulsed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so that line of inquiry still works. You can be like, what
Yeah.
happens if I? Okay,
Oh yeah,
okay.
definitely. Yeah, because that you have all of your power in that situation to make a decision. You're just trying to get more information so that you can make a better decision, which is the only reason we do divination in the first place, is so we can make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it is a really good information gathering system
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And again, iterate and continue asking questions, and because sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
not always for clients, because usually you can read what comes up in a chart. Sometimes I'll throw two for a client if I'm like, this revealed another question. But
Mm-hmm.
like if it's like, if Marissa and I are going over a question back and forth with each other, there might be like 5 or 6 charts thrown back and
Yeah,
forth
it's like
on it.
throw another one. Like
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but you gotta go from where you let. It's that evaluation thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So because if you ask it the same question, it gets real bitchy
Mm-hmm. It's like, get
real
the
fast.
fuck out of here.
Yeah. And Geomancer has a couple like quit it responses like
Mhm.
built into the system, where the system tells you, it's got one that says you already know the answer.
Mhm.
It's got one that says you're lying to yourself about the question. It's
Mm-hmm.
got one that says there's probably a storm right now, don't ask me. It's got another one that's like, this situation is fucked.
Mm.
You know? So that there's some nice checks built in, but
Mhm.
it was something used to take castles. Gotta get some
Mm.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, magical information gathering is definitely the right move if you're gonna do some kind of offensive. If you're gonna like get into it and like try to take a
Mhm.
castle or do something aggressive this way, you should definitely do as much recon as you can do before that.
Yep. It better be what you want. Otherwise, it's gonna suck when you get there.
Right. Or like, it could like, what's my best strategy? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
totally.
Like,
But like I previously had this hot take. I'm not sure how much the hot take stands, but I used to say, I'm like, everybody that's doing magic just wants to have sex all the time, and I don't understand why people are doing money magic at all instead of enchanting for having sex. Because I'm like, all right, why do you want more money? It's like, well, so I don't have to work the same job. It's like, why do you not want to work the same job? It's like, I want to work less hours. Why do you want to work less hours? So I can have more time to fuck. I'm like, all right, enchant for more time to fuck. You don't have to do all of these roundabout ways of being like, well, first I'm going to need money and a different job and a different, like, no, no, no. Throw all of the magic at more time to fuck. That's why desire work is so important.
and that's how I lost my job.
You go for the ride. Whee!
I got so much time now.
Yep.
Sometimes you do have to add without starving.
Yes.
I'd like more time to fuck, and also gym membership so I look good while I'm doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And that like you have to have that desire all the way thought out. Cause like maybe you are the person that wants to like you're like, no, that's literally I would like to go out. Like I want to starve and waste away fucking for the next like year. I'm like, great. You did really good desire work. You're gonna have a great death. And like your time on the other side of the spirit world is gonna be like, great. I did everything I wanted to do down there.
It's a harsh kind of asceticism that Marissa is offering to people, but
Truly.
you got it. Somebody's stuck on that one. He's like,
Yeah.
I hadn't considered it fully. Now that you're laying it out.
Yeah, I don't think starvation is fun. I feel like once you get to the point of starvation, even sex stops being fun at a certain point. I don't know if this is true. I haven't made it to that point. I've never been that hungry. I've never been so hungry that I was like, sex doesn't seem fun anymore. The hungriest I've ever been was like 2 meals a day or something like this, or like intentionally fasting, that doesn't
Yeah.
count. But uh yeah, I don't know. I'm not I'm I'm agreeing with current Marissa in that I don't know if this hot take really stands. But, but I'm not mad at the thought experiment. I'm definitely not mad at the thought experiment for sure.
Well, but I think it does do the same thing that again, this is the sort of geomancy thing we talked about, where like, how do I find love? Go get a car. Like all my things are
Mm-hmm.
car related tonight. But but in order to do that, you're going to need to get yourself together. You need to get a job. You need to do this, that, and the other to become a more attractive person. And then people fall in love with you because you seem like you got shit together, and that your likelihood goes up. And I think I would like to have all the freedom to fuck in the way that I would want to fuck, however I would want to do. Whether or not that is quote unquote money magic, probably does put you in a better wealth magic position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to be healthy. Because if you want to fuck all the time, you're going to be healthy.
Def.
Yeah.
All right. So, how do we think with that kind of target? Because it seems like there's a lot of stipulations here. You know what I mean? And I always have trouble when I'm like trying to work stipulations into my magical targets. Then I'm always like, oh man, I like this. It feels like it's like crossing the currents a little bit. It's gonna like fuck up my my original plan. If my plan is to like enchant toward being able to have as much time to fuck as I want, then as soon as I start being like, okay, but also like let there be enough money, and I've got something to eat, and I've got a car, and the partners are really nice, and I've got like as soon as I'm like it feels like the whole thing gets diluted a little bit. You know what I mean? And not diluted like delusional, although perhaps that as well, but diluted, meaning like watery and impotent. How do you guys navigate that?
I would come back to prayer a lot, because I think you can feel what a life of delicious fucking feels like in your body. Like you can imagine the satisfaction that comes with it, and you can sit in the sensations of your body. And the more time that you sit in the sensations of your body, the more that you'll notice them when they're coming up, and you just follow them like a compass. I feel like I'm repeating myself. But then like also you can figure out like what things you can kind of like prey on, and just like keep like, this is the way it's going to taste, this is the way it's going to taste, and what things you have to push on like practical enchantment wise, if that makes sense.
So think about it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the thing that you want, it's the thing you want to be doing all the time, you should want to think about it all the time. You should want to feel the way that you want to feel all the time.
I think too, for me, you said something about diluting, right? I think that's a good way to sort of like notice, so that it's like, don't like, if I think it's a good exercise to blow it up and say, well, wait, what would I actually need if I wanted to fuck all, what is this? So just explode it, but then you also bring it back down again, where you're like, I don't actually need 2 cars. That is diluting my intention. You know what I mean? And so it becomes this really cool exercise of, I thought I wanted money. I actually wanted to fuck. What do I need to fuck? I thought I wanted money again. I don't need quite that much. That seems ridiculous. But oh wait, I do want money. I want enough to help be a part of this goal that is my other desire. Like I have a little desire inside a bigger desire, right? This one feels legit. It doesn't feel like it's pulling away from what's happening. And I'm gonna use a fight analogy again. So one of the things that keeps people from hitting hard is they tense up the part of their body they're not using. So the muscles are actually pulling away from the power. You want to be able to let everything that is part of the power flow, and whatever is not part of the power needs to be relaxed, right? And this is, for me, magic is much the same. You want that whole connective chain of desire to flow in a line. And some of it is connected, but some things that comes up in your brain are just tension, and you got to learn to let that go. Sometimes it helps to break it down into smaller goals for me in that case too, where I'm like, okay, I do have a big one, because sometimes, as you were saying in the beginning, Zamboni, we can be like, I want the moon, but halfway through getting the moon, I'm like, I don't actually want the moon anymore. That seems, now I've changed. I want all these other things. So it's okay, I think, sometimes to start with smaller things and see how you feel. Like, I think it's good to sit with that big feeling first, but then if you're like, yeah, I would like to fuck all the time, but right now it'd be nice to get somebody I can fuck at least once a week. You know what I mean? Like, can I start with at least once and that's a dumb example, but like sometimes you feel more, you're building power closer to you, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, all right, I'm going to start with that and see how it goes. So I do all of that list of things that I just bloviated about when I'm approaching these problems.
That's interesting. I personally don't feel like I've had a lot of success with that kind of magic that's really aimed at a particular goal. Like I have, or at a long distance particular goal. Like I've had particular goals come through, like a free donut or something like that. Because I don't have a regular partner all the time, so maybe I want to.
Exactly, gotta get that Boston cream on. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly. You see where I'm going with this.
Sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. Yeah, a couple of episodes ago, when you said that my love life was a desolate wasteland, that's what you were talking about, right?
Oh man, I screamed when I heard that. I was like, damn.
Yeah, so fucking same.
It's not. That's why I made the joke.
Anyway, I've had good success at like getting the donut or whatever else, right? Like these kinds of like short-term goals. But the best, like most magical feelings that I've been able to conjure have been sort of, they've been more abstract. So here's a really good example. So when Jupiter was in Pisces, then I made a bunch of Jupiter and Pisces talismans. And so I carved into a piece of lapis lazuli an image of two confluent streams. So two streams flowing together into the same stream, becoming one stream, right? And so what I asked for was cooperation. I don't remember exactly what the wording was that I used. And I think I made a sigil that went along with it, in addition to Jupiter images and Jupiter sigils and this kind of thing, right? So the image that I used was the water, and then there was the there were like Agrippa sigils and stuff like that on there, as well as my own personal sigil. And so that was like the thing that I asked for. And then over the past couple of years, then I have found a group of musicians who all work together. We all work together really well, and I'm really proud of this band. We've got a next album coming out pretty soon, and like I've really each of them has privately expressed to me how grateful they are to me for being the cohesive force that holds the whole thing together, right? So like this idea of confluence is sort of centered around me and my presence in the space, right? And so it's all been deeply meaningful and very exciting. And this wasn't what I had in mind when I drew this image of like, okay, I want things that are flowing separately to flow together around where I'm at. And so, and I knew that I wanted to play music, but that wasn't explicitly included in the intentions or any of this sort of stuff. And so then I finally got into it and I was like, oh, and now here I am a couple of years later and I've been carrying around these talismans and whatever else, and it's like, oh, I got the thing that I wanted. And it wasn't, I didn't I didn't aim at a band that would respect me as a teacher or whatever else, right? Like I was just like, I want the confluence. So bring me some confluence. And I got that. And so there have been a few of these, like the Picatrix magic has been some of the strongest magic in this way, where I've gotten things that I didn't think that I was asking for, but then got that thing and was like, oh, this is exactly what I asked for. If you like look at the image, and like this is precisely it. And so it that style of magic has left me with a very magical feeling in my life. Like I feel like I live a very charmed life. But when it comes to this idea of like, oh, I would like to spend 30 hours a week fucking, then like, and that's my goal, and I have a single-minded goal, and like the Miracle Club or whatever else, you know, like that sort of style. Like I cannot, I've not been able to get that shit to work for me. As a little PSA. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. I this is bringing to mind that like my success with magic was similar. Like the reason that I have the word ecstasy is because I was trying to figure out the feeling that I wanted to be following through the world, and I did like a bunch of intention style and just like prayer and mantra magic for my job brings ecstasy together, and that's how I ended up as a somatic sex educator, like helping people find their pathway through ecstasy, finding the yeses and the nos in their bodies, like. And I didn't know what somatic sex education even was when I made that prayer. Like I was in the middle of grad school. I was living in a different apartment, just sitting there like, I don't know what I want to do, but it's not this, I think. And I even went through a whole year of graduate school after I did that magic and had to find out that graduate school was not the thing that I wanted to do. Quit graduate school, and then that summer is when I found that somatic sex education existed. And I said, this is it. And the synchronicity storm just like went off the chain. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is the river to jump in. So maybe that's just how you do magic. Like,
yeah, I think so. On having done some of that like focused aim work, that sort of new thought approach, and found it very useful, it still looks a lot more like what you're talking about to me, because what you're finding, what I found anyway, was a desire I had, but it was very much more of a feeling, right? Like I did a bunch of stuff that ended up in securing me a much better position and things that I needed to do in order to be the person working the hard job for 3 years that everybody was describing earlier on in the podcast. But it is the mantra that I used at the time was, I stand on my own 2 feet, because that was the closest I could get to an expression of a feeling that was inexpressible on some level, right? And I did not really know. I was willing to take lots of things that made that feeling feel real, right? And so I think that even if you do go down the road of like, this is my one true aim, you know, you're probably better off if it is a feeling and a wish you can barely express or barely even know, you know, because gaining anything related to that is going to change how you understand what that thing is. And if I do think people fuck themselves up by being like, no, I said I want to be a computer programmer who does this, this, and this. And just because I got 13 other results that would have done the exact same thing, you know, this magic didn't work, you know, and I'm like, oh, you know. So I think it's a good caution note that like desire isn't always something you can write down. Even if you're using a mantra, you know. Maybe that's why, I mean, and also on sigils too, like part of why we take it out of words and put it into symbols is connected to that, I think, you know, like we try to get beyond the words to something that's even deeper. We may not know how to say.
And that came up in Gordon's prayer course, where someone visited a monk, and the monk said, he's like, the prayer is the feeling in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're following. That's what we're conjuring.
Mm-hmm. Right. We bring the spirit in. What is the spirit we bring in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I got really cracked open on that by listening to Rune Rasmussen talk about what is Freyr, who the Norse god, who even is that? And it's the spirit that arises when all the conditions of a good kingdom, peace, prosperity, and everything else, when those are in place, that is Freyr. When you're living in that place of the good kingdom, that's when that god is there. And that god, and knowing that and trying to conjure that god into being is what will bring that god into being, right? Like,
Sounds like a real carrot and a stick to me. Oh yeah. When your kingdom is in good order, then God will be here.
no,
Trust me. I promise.
No, it's a this rock is a cure for seasickness. That's what it is. As long as you keep this rock in your mouth, you can't get seasick.
So Marissa, tell me about somatic sex education. Is this what you do? Is this how? And how can people have been listening to you be brilliant for the last 2 hours? Like, what? I know everybody is at home being like, I want to learn how to listen to my yeses. I want to be like Marissa when I grow up. Like, how can they get in touch with you? What you got going on?
My website is marissagamberutti.com.
It's what?
That is marissagamberutti.com.
Well, all right.
And that's where you can find a way to contact me to set up a discovery call, a 15-minute discovery call where we'll talk about what your goals and intentions are for your desires and pleasure and what you want to do with your body, and if we're the right fit for each other. Cats. We talked about cats in the beginning. She just jumped on the cords. All right. Let me get my video back. 1 second.
That is the most perfect cat thing. She's been waiting the entire time until you're about to explain the pitch. It's like they forgot I was here. Now it's my moment.
Indeed. Before we pressed the record button, Marissa made sure to get up and let the cat back in so that this would happen. That's
Felicia is here. Right, don't step on. No, I'm not even gonna say that. We're not gonna manifest that one too. Stay. So you go to my website to book a call. We'll talk about what it is that you want to do and if we're going to be a good fit for each other. What the fuck even is somatic sex education? Somatics is the practice of listening to the sensations in the body. And this includes the senses and the sensations that we're already familiar with, like touch or sight or smell or taste, but it also includes things like temperature or the sense of pressure against your skin, and proprioception and interoception. Proprioception is the sense that you have of your posture and how your body is positioned in space. Interoception is the sense that you have of the inside of your body, so like your heart beating, or like where you feel your breath in your body. So the practice of somatics gets brought into sex education because the more that you are aware and noticing the sensations of your body, the more access that you have to a greater capacity for pleasure. Because if you're noticing pleasure, it's going to get bigger. And if you're noticing different places that you can resource pleasure from, those are also going to get bigger just with practice. Pleasure, like anything else in life, is something that you can get better at. So that's like the education piece. It's not sex education it can be sex education in like, this is your anatomy, and these are like the different parts of your body and what they do. But a lot of the education is like getting better at pleasure. That's the point of somatic sex education, is to feel more pleasure with your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the folks can go to MarissaGamberutti.com.
MarissaGamberutti.com.
Yeah, love it. It's super fun to say. Do you want to say it, Brian?
I do want to say MarissaGamberutti.com. Yeah, I do.
Woo! There it is. There it is.
Just trips along the tongue.
Uh-huh. All right. The folks can go there and get in on they can improve their own pleasure praxis. Do you offer geomancy readings there as well?
Yeah, there's a little tab on that website that says divination consulting, and there's information on how to book a geomancy reading right there.
Dope.
And again, in case it went by quickly, Marissa is someone I turn to when I want geomancy reading. You know, when you're sort of geomancers recommending geomancers, but if you have a case where you're like, I would like someone else's opinion, please, rather than my own, Marissa is someone that I use in that way as well. I can highly recommend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One time I got a reading with Marissa and she told me to stop messing around with that girl. I did. Look at me now. Shout out to the Boston Cream.
Donut. I was gonna say Donut King of Midwest.
So speaking of geomancy readings, tell us what's going on at wilkinsbryan.com.
Oh, you're welcome to come by and grab a geomancy reading or a Deccan Oracle reading from me over there. The Deccan
Oracle reading? You mean from your very own book that you wrote, A Wheel of Small Gods? You mean that one?
Yes, correct, sir. From that and from the accompanying deck there. So you can get a chance to both investigate the kind of questions we talked about with geomancy today, or look at some different poetic oracular understandings of how we think with time and health and these kind of different questions. So, but yeah, as I mentioned before, I actually fixed up the website, so it's easy to do. So please come by. I'd love to have a chat to talk to you and see what's going on. That's if you're not too busy, already filling up your time with masterful readings from Zamboni on all of his astrology. He, by the way, hates when I do this. He's making the face. But you should go to ZamboniFunk.com and book a reading with him. And get in on his slots while they're available. Zamboni, wait, do you have a class coming up or something? Do you have anything?
Yes, I have an astrology fundamentals course coming up. It will begin on June 19th. We're going to go through all the fundamentals of reading astrology. So if you don't know how to read astrology already, if you don't know how to read a wheel chart, then you maybe, if you're just starting from a place of astrology enthusiasm and you just like listening to astrologers or this kind of thing, but you want to learn how to do it for yourself, then that I will be teaching all of the fundamentals. I have put in my time. I've done 10,000 chart readings up to this point. I've done more than that. I'm probably at 11,000 now or something. And it is, so I feel real competent at the fundamentals. I have run down these fundamentals a lot of times, and I feel real good about how I think about them and my way of teaching them as well. So you can get that. That's right on the front page at ZamboniFunk.com. And it's right there next to the same spot where you can book a reading. So if you don't feel like doing all that bullshit and you just want me to read a chart for you, I'm happy to do that. Check it out, ZamboniFunk.com. That's the same place where you can get access to the music. That's where you can find all the rest of these podcasts. You can find merch that's really super dope, Zamboni Funk merch. I super recommend getting some of these posters or t-shirts or hoodies or mugs or what. Brian, tell me what you got on your mind.
I have to say, I'm not sure I can promise that this is the case. Every time I have worn my Zamboni t-shirt out in public, I have gotten compliments, not only from just random strangers, but from cool strangers. Like people where you're like, oh wow, that person seems really cool. I'm afraid I might talk to them. I have had them come up to me and be like, that's a great t-shirt. What is this about? So
Dope.
If that's your desire, is to go to the coffee shop and have cool strangers come up to you and ask you where your t-shirt's from, you got to get over to ZamboniFunk.com.
There it is. That's what's really real. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Brian, for hanging out and talking so much shit with me. Appreciate y'all listening to me talk about, like, poke holes in your theories here. It's super fun. I'm having a delightful time. Thank you to the listeners for being here with us. Thank you to the ancestors for making the way. Thank you to the earth for continuing to hold us up. Thank y'all for being here and for getting through all of it. Appreciate all y'all. Peace and blessings, family. I'll see y'all next time.